Be'ezrat Hashem Naaseh V'Natzliach. I want to welcome you to another Parashat Shavua class here in Chabad in Aventura. Before we get started with tonight's class, which is a deep dive into YEHOSHUA bin Nun. You think you know his story. You think you've heard it all. And these are my favorite types of classes. When you come in and you think you know every single thing. What can you tell me about Moshe? What can you tell me about Rachel Imenu? What can you tell me about YEHOSHUA bin Nun? Well, let's see. I accept the challenge. Baruch Hashem, we went very, very deep into a lot of different books and found incredible Moshe Rabbeinu. You know all the titles of who he is, what he was. Nachshon ben Aminadav. You don't need Mr. Doctor, PhD, all that. Once you get the name, you know that there's a whole story there. So tonight, YEHOSHUA bin Nun. Before we get started with tonight's class, I'd like to give some honorable mentions and dedications to the following people. Yitbarach Shemo Shel HaKadosh Baruch Hu Be'ezrat Hashem. That tonight's class will be in honor of Jacqueline Bat Alia and Tova Shindel Bat Alta. But first, let's not forget Yud Zayin Betamuz, right? So we have on the 17th day of Tammuz, we're entering a very dark period in Jewish history and a very dark 3 weeks. So Be'ezrat Hashem, that we'll learn Torah tonight, L'Shem Shamayim V'Besimcha, to give Hashem Nachat Ruach, and that Be'ezrat Hashem we merit to the coming of Mashiach and the building of Bet HaMikdash, B'mhira B'Yamenu, B'Chesed U'Berachamim, Amen. Now we'll do dedications. May tonight's class be to the Ilu Nishmat of David ben Zohara, Yaniv ben Rina, Michel ben Zohara, Aviv ben Vivi, Avraham Yoshua ben Sultana, Simon ben Alia, Mazal bat Luna, Beir ben Rebecca, Sultan bat Frecha, Yitzchak ben Sevilla, Nisim ben Meir, Rachel bat Bela, Yaakov ben Tamar, Suzan bat Shava, Yehuda ben Aharon, Brendel bat Meir-Dov, Shalom ben Zohara, Chana bat Chava, Kranchi bat Braindov, Tzion ben Dina, Rachel bat Alice. Also, this class will be to Refuah Shelema of Amram ben Zohara, Daniel bat Mazal, Miriam bat Pesi Penina, Yaakov ben Dina, Gabriel ben Mashiach, Keren Chava bat Dona, Nir ben Yehudit, Chaya Yael Shoshana bat Chana Freidov, Leah Sarit bat Yael Shindel, Heleni Orna bat Chen Chana, and Ahuva bat Shendel. Also, this class be to the Zivug Hagun, Mishosh Nishmatan, to Inbal bat Jacqueline, bat Chen bat Jacqueline, Guy ben Dina, Sheina Henshi bat Leah Gittel, Eli ben Shula, Yehudit ben Sarah, Tamar Adina bat Devor Miro, Yosef ben Sarah, Rachel Leah bat Pharaoh, and Shaked bat Revital, Shir bat Revital, and Be'ezrat Hashem, this class also be to the Herayon Kal v'Leda Kala of Enat bat Larissa, Sarah Miriam bat Hena Rivka, and Bracha ve'Atzlacha to Avraham ben Daniel, Yosef ben Daniel, Avraham ben Violet Chaya, Yehuda Leib ben Tova Shindel, Guy Shlomo ben Shimon, Desiree Navia, Yael Teppenbergen family, Joseph Dornbuschen family. Also, that this will be to the Refuah Shema of Shaul Yosef ben Garaz, Judah Mendel, Esther Freda, Dov Shmuel and Pesi Penina family, Shalom ben Chaya Carmela, and also for our good friend of the class, Yehudit ben Shabbat, who's sponsoring today's class for the Zivugim of everyone that needs it. Amen. Okay, Baruch Hashem, let's get started. Parashat Pinchas. So if you just flip the page over, if you guys remember, we were just dealing with Bilam and Balak. The two anti-Semites, the wizard and the magician that wanted to curse the Jewish people, hurt the Jewish people, and they weren't able to do it with weapons, they weren't able to do it with a war, but they were able to affect us spiritually. They had a spiritual tactic that they used. Bnot Moav, we lost 24,000 Jews over there. Zivri ben Salu is also one of the Zobrin Kozbi, which is the class that we did last week. And we see that the Midianim are now were successful at affecting the Jewish people with their tactics. So Parashat Pinchas begins with Vaydaber Hashem Moshe el Mob Pinchas ben Azar ben Aaron HaKohen. Remember, Pinchas ben Azar, he's the one that calmed me down from my anger. Bekanot kinati betocham velo chalitit beIsrael. That he he was a zealot, that he went against what the Jewish people did, the 24,000 from Shevet Shimon, and the head of Shevet Shimon, Zivri ben Salu. And we get an instruction during the parasha, Tzaror et HaMidyanim, go harass the Midianites, smite them, vehikitem otam. And as we get to this part of going to war against the Midyanim, we have a full recounting of the Jewish people after the plague. They get counted, and every single family is accounted for. And we start to see that there's something interesting in the way that they're numbered. Mishpachat Chetzron, Mishpachat HaChetzroni, Charmi, Mishpachat HaKarmi. Every time that there's a name of a family, it has a Hey and a Yud before. And Lezerach, Mishpachat HaZrachi, Tzfuni, Mishpachat Chagi, Mishpachat HaChagi, Shuni, Mishpachat HaShuni. So why do we need the Yud and the Hey? To show us that this family was pure, this family is good, this family has the stamp of God on it, the Yud and the Hey. And right after that, keep in mind that we're in year number 40 in the desert, and now we're going to deal with a lot of things that have to do with going into the land of Israel. One of the things is that Bnot Tzlofchad, if you remember, from Shevet Menashe, they were a family with no men, family with no boys, they were only ladies. So they want to know, what's our law? What's with us? Do we inherit our father's land, or does our land go to somebody else? So they're asking for their share in this week's parasha, and they get their answer and said, "Lama yigash avinu b'toch mishpachtenu ki en lo ben. Tena lanu achuzah b'toch achi avinu. Give us the land." And Moshe Rabbeinu brings their claim in front of God and gets the answer. And just as we get to this section of the parasha, Perek Chav Zayin, Pasuk Yud Bet to Chav Gimel is what we're going to be dealing with today, and then the class will start. We'll start with the text, we'll continue with an explanation, we'll do some summary with commentary, and then we'll start to peel the onion. It begins to say, Hashem is speaking to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Vayomer Hashem Moshe, Ale el har ha'avarim hazeh. Hashem tells Moshe, go on top of this mountain called Har Ha'avarim. Ur'eh et ha'aretz asher natati bnei Yisrael. I want you to see the land that I'm giving to the Jewish people. Look at the land. Can't go in. V'ra'ita ota v'ne'esafta el amecha gam ata. Now take a look at the land, and it's time for you to go. It's time for you to expire. Ka'asher ne'esaf Aaron achicha. Just like your brother passed away not too long ago, it's your turn to go as well. Now he continues to say, Ka'asher miritim pi b'midbar tzin במריבת העדה להקדישני במים לעיניהם, הם ממריבת קדש מדבר צין. So he gives them a reason why he can't enter the land. Because you rebelled against me. You rebelled against my word in Midbar Tzin, in the wilderness of Zid. And there was, this assembly of strife from all the Jewish people that were there. And you failed to sanctify me at Mei Merivah, the water before their eyes. And they were the waters of strife in Kadesh, in the wilderness of Zin. So the reason why is because Moshe failed to do a Kiddush Hashem at that moment. Moshe replies, וידבר משה אל השם לאמור, יפקוד השם אלוהי רוחות לכל בשר איש על העדה. Okay, if my time has come, who's taking over? Appoint somebody who's going to be able to replace me. But the wording here is very interesting. As it says, May Hashem, God of the spirits of all flesh, appoint a man over the assembly. And what type of man? אשר יצא לפניהם, ואשר יבוא לפניהם, ואשר יוציאם, ואשר יביאם, ולא תהיה עדת השם כצאן אשר אין להם רועה. So it says over there that the person should come out, who shall come out before them and come in before them, who shall take them and bring them, and let that be the assembly of HaKadosh Baruch Hu be like sheep that have no shepherd. Take him out, bring him in. I don't know what that means. We'll get to it in a second. Vayomer Hashem el Moshe. Hashem tells Moshe, I have the perfect candidate for you. Kach lecha et YEHOSHUA BIN NUN. Take YEHOSHUA BIN NUN, ish asher ruach bo. He is a man who there is a spirit within him. V'samachta et yadecha alav, and lean your hands upon him. V'amata oto lifnei Elazar Kohen, and put him in front of Elazar Kohen. V'lifnei kol ha'ada, present him in front of all the congregation of people. V'tzivita oto le'enehem, and command him before all their eyes. V'natata mehodecha alav leman yishmeu kol ha'adat b'nei Yisrael, and give from your majesty, from your splendor, from your majesty upon him in front of all the Jewish people. ולפני אלעזר הכהן יעמוד, ושאל לו במשפט האורים לפני השם, על פיו יצאו ועל פיו יבואו, הוא וכל בני ישראל איתו וכל העדה. It says, and put him in front of Elazar Kohen, which means that YEHOSHUA bin Nun and Elazar Kohen are going to work in unison. He's going to ask him a question, and I'm going to reply to his question with the Urim V'Tumim. Remember the breastplate that the Kohen HaGadol wears. I'm going to reply to them. So that means if they need to go to war, if they have any sort of question, they'll interact through the breastplate. And according to the reply that they get from the Urim V'Tumim, that's how they know if they go to war or they don't go to war, and they get their answers for their questions. And this will be the method used for all of the Jewish people and all the congregation. ויעש משה כאשר ציווה השם אותו, ויקח את יהושע ועמידו לפני אלעזר הכהן לפני כל העדה. Moshe obviously does as he's commanded, and he takes Yehoshua and he puts him in front of Eliezer Kohen and in front of the congregation of the Jewish people. ויסמוך את ידיו עליו ויצווהו, and he leaned his hands upon him and he commanded him as Hashem had spoken through Moshe Rabbeinu. In short, we have over here the passing of the guard. Moshe Rabbeinu is at the last days of his role as the leader of Am Yisrael, year 40 of the Jewish people being in the desert. The baton is being passed on to YEHOSHUA bin Nun, and it's very interesting over here the qualifications that were necessary in order for him to fulfill that role, which is Ish el Asher Ruach Bo, a man who has a spirit within him. We'll see what all that means. So that is the pshat. So if we left it right here, great. We understand it like every first grader that goes to school. They read the Pesukim, they understand the words, and then they come home and they tell you the whole story. Let's go maybe to high school level of understanding, and let's do some commentary, a summary of what's going on here behind the scene with a combination of a few commentaries, and then we'll dig in some more. Me'am Loez did a tremendous job of summarizing in this week's parasha as well. And it starts. He says, it's very interesting. The first thing that he wants us to notice is the second that Hashem tells them it's time for a new leader, did you notice any resistance? Did Moshe Rabbeinu say anything? He immediately said, what? וידבר משה לשמו, יפקוד השם אלוקי אחד לכל בשר, איש על העדה. Can you please choose the next one in command? So we see the greatness of Moshe Rabbeinu. כאן מודיע כתוב שבחם של צדיקים. From here we see the greatness of the righteous individuals in Jewish history. After Kadosh Baruch Hu tells Moshe that he's going to die outside of the land of Israel, Moshe Rabbeinu left all his personal hang-ups aside, and he didn't ask anything for himself, but immediately requested for the needs of the Jewish people. He tells them, Elohei Ruchot Lechol Basar, the one who has all the spirits and all the flesh, the master of the universe. You are the, and why would that be? Why? Let's stop here a second. Why would Moshe Rabbeinu say Elohei Ruchot Lechol Basar? Elohei Ruchot Lechol Basar. What's Elohei Ruchot Lechol Basar? Elohei Ruchot is the God of all the souls, God of all the spirits, that also is in charge of all the flesh of the human beings. Meaning there's two parts to a human being, right? We're body and soul. We're flesh and we're a neshama. So Moshe Rabbeinu right away turns to Kadosh Baruch Hu and tells them, you know that you are the God of the spirits and of the flesh. It's evident before you what everybody's thinking is. Da'ato shekol echad ve'echad. And that no one is like the other one. She'en echad domeh lachavero. Im ken, if that's the case, if all people are completely different, no one is alike, then it's going to be very, very difficult for the next leader to rule over or to guide or to lead so many different types of individuals, so many different opinions, so many different characters. So if the next leader after me should have let the next leader be somebody that can tolerate different types of people. And should have a lot of patience with them. Interesting. Moshe Rabbeinu is speaking from 40 years of experience. He says the next candidate needs what? Needs patience, and he needs to tolerate people.
And another 40.
Now he calls, what's savlanut? Savlanut is the word patience. But the root of the word is sabal. You know what's sabal? It's a porter, somebody that carries boxes, somebody who carries luggage. To have savlanut, right? To have savlanut, to have patience, is you being able to carry the load of dealing with somebody. It's not so simple dealing with people. Sometimes it feels like it's a big rock on your shoulders. Oh, what a husband I have. Oh, what a wife I have. Oh, what children I have. Baruch Hashem that you have a husband. Baruch Hashem you have a wife. Baruch Hashem you have children. But sometimes it becomes like a heavy load. So when it becomes a heavy load and you feel like you are sabal, that you're carrying the whole world on your shoulders, what do you need? Savlanut. You need patience. Why? Because things need to play out. Scenarios need to play out. People need to educate themselves. They need knowledge. They need to do teshuvah. They need to learn Torah. They need all the dinim to go away. So while you're carrying like a sabal, all the world's problems on you, you also need savlanut. So imagine a leader who's got 1 million people that he has to deal with, that he has to turn to, that he has to tend to. So he says, bring somebody, sheyeh sovel kol echad ve'echad. Now the word sovel is another play on the word of savlanut and sabal. Sovel is to suffer, but not so much to suffer with people. Sovel meaning you're able to absorb, you're able to tolerate people that are around you. So a person who's able to tolerate a lot of different people is somebody who has a very cool temper, somebody who's very slow to anger, somebody who's able to work with a lot of different scenarios, a lot of different people, and it doesn't faze him in a way where he loses control of emotions or of decision-making process. So Moshe Rabbeinu is in a way saying, Elohei Ruchot Lechol Basar, the God of the soul, of the spirits, and of the flesh. You know how different we are as human beings. Make sure that the next leader sovel kol echad ve'echad lefi da'ato v'yinhagem b'savlanut meruba. That he'll be able to tolerate every single person because of their different opinions and ideologies and characters, and you should have a lot of patience with them. Moshe is speaking from experience, because a lot of times we see that Moshe got angry at Am Yisrael. A lot of times he lost patience with Am Yisrael. So look at a great leader that he actually can say, you know what? I was actually wrong in a few places. Make sure that the next guy doesn't do the same mistakes. Furthermore, it says, Asher yetzeh lifnehem v'asher yavo lifnehem. That one was kind of interesting. What does it mean that you should go out before them and come back after them? I'm sorry, you should go out before them and should come back before them as well. So here they're talking about a completely different aspect to a leader, which is a general of war, a warrior. Meaning when the time comes to go to war, שיצא לפניהם. Let him be the first one leading them. And also be the first one to come back after victory. Because we know there's a lot of generals, what they do. Like for example, perfect example, look what's happening in Gaza, right? Their leaders, where are their leaders? They're not even in Gaza. They went down a tunnel, got on a plane, and they're sitting in Qatar somewhere. That's a leader. Not close. The Jewish leader is supposed to be the one that is in the front line fighting with them. ולא יהיה כמלכי אומות העולם היושבים בבתיהם ומשלחים את חיילותיהם למלחמה. Today's newspaper. It says not like the generals that sit in fancy homes and send their enemies out to fight. He says no, let him be the one that goes out to fight with his people. וילך לפני במלחמה כמו שעשיתי אני. He says, and let him mimic me. Let him do the same thing as me. Which is what? When the time came to go to war against Sichon, Melech HaEmori, V'og, Melech HaBashan, the two giants, who was on the front line? Who was the first one to lead them? It was me. Make sure that this is something that he continues, which is great. We can see right now with Moshe Rabbeinu, he's saying the do's and don'ts. Certain things are, yes, do the same. Certain thing, stay away, learn, become better than what I did in my previous role. Furthermore, Elohei kol haruchot. He says another reason why you should choose somebody who's appropriate. שאתה יודע ליבו של כל אחד ואחד, ואני מבקש ממך שתעמיד להם איש על העדה. You know who has the perfect spirit, soul, neshama, the one who has the resiliency in his character to deal with this Jewish nation. We're just like in a few parashiyot ago, we got that title of Am Kshei Oref. Who can deal with Am Kshei Oref? Who can deal with a stiff-necked nation that have so many different things that we have to deal with every single time? Please, you know out of the millions of people that are here, who is the perfect candidate. Meaning it's not left to us people to choose. You choose God. You choose the one who has that resume. This I love, as it's brought in Surah Mor. How do you summarize? What is the headline on the resume? Gever miguvrin she'bal koach v'gibor milchama. As they say in the streets, gever, right? A man's man. Let it be a man's man. That he's strong and he's brave and he's going to be a gibor milchama. That is the character to look for in a leader. Baal ometz, the one who has bravery. Velo pachdan, he's not scared. V'ilech lifnei b'milchama, in the time of war, he's the first one to be in the front line. V'yeh baal marcha tova shetamid plo oivav tachtav, and he'll know how to manage war, that his enemies will always fall before him. But he should also have midot tovot, v'lo yeh baal ga'ava v'lo kabdan. They should have good midot, good character traits, and he should not be full of pride and filled of haughtiness, and he shouldn't be kabdan. He shouldn't be so particular, like a stickler about things. V'yeh savlan, and he should be patient. She'isbol midotav shekol echad ve'echad. They should be able to tolerate every single individual, no matter how different they are. And like that, he'll be able to lead the nation in its proper way. And by doing that, by putting such a person in place, then God's flock won't be a flock without a shepherd, God forbid. And let him be also one that has good attributes, acts that he has ma'asim tovim, that not only is he going to have all these qualifications and qualities about him, but because he has within him good attributes, ma'asim tovim, his merits are going to be the ones that protect him and the nation. Meaning we see that as a leader, he's such a tzaddik that his merit, his zchuyot are going to be protecting him and the Jewish people as one. Now, Moshe had a passing thought. And it's just a passing thought. It says, Ifkod Hashem Elokei Aruchot. He says, Hashem, you're about to choose somebody who's going to take over my position. Moshe says, what about my boys? Maybe Gershom and Eliezer. Maybe they could take over my spot. Right? Why? Because we just dealt with Not Tzlofchad. And what we see, that the girls inherited the land of the father. So he's saying, maybe, now the boys will inherit the role of the father, the job of the father. We know in previous classes that they weren't up to par. They weren't into that level of, within the Jewish nation to be leaders. But nevertheless, Moshe had a passing thought. Maybe my children, maybe my boys. It's normal. At the end of the day, Moshe is an Abba. Moshe is a father. And you always want the best for your children. Even when, in our eyes, even when they do something wrong, we know how to cover for them. We know how to, make things, earmuffs. We know how to make things better, Right, Shlomo? He happens to be the Guru, Baruch Hashem, so he's like, I know what you're talking about, I'm always good. But nevertheless, he had a passing thought. So HaKadosh Baruch Hu comes in on that passing thought and he says, it's not like you think. Lo k'fi she'ata choshev. Yehoshua yemale mekomcha. Not your children are going to take over your position, rather Yehoshua. Velo banecha, not your children. Why? What did Yehoshua do that he merited to take over the role of the leader of the Jewish people? Moshe Rabbeinu, number 2. Ki Yehoshua shimesh otcha harbe shanim. He was your apprentice for many, many years. V'haya mashkim u'ma'ariv bevet hamidrash. He would wake up in the morning and go to sleep late at night in the synagogue, in the learning place. And what would he do? Before everybody showed up and after everybody left, Mesader Safsalim. He would fix up the place. He would fix the chairs, strain up the tables, and he would make the little carpets that they would sit on. He would clean them up and strain them up. Lachen min hadin hu shikanes bimkomcha. By law, it makes sense that he should be the one that fills your place. As the pasuk says, Notzer te'ena yochel pirya. The one who plants the fig tree is the one who's going to eat the fig fruit. He's the one that worked for it. He's the one that earned it. And he's the one that's going to get it. Continues to say, the Kadosh Baruch Hu, now again, we're having the conversation behind the scenes. Obviously, we just have 2 pesukim over here, but the Midrash and Imam Loez, who brings us the Yalkut and the Tzor Amor and Baal HaTurim and all these other Rabbeinu Bachye and Yalkut Reuveni, Yalkut Shimoni, Rashi. He brings them all into one big collection and gives us behind the scenes conversation with God. So the conversation continues. And Hashem tells Kadosh Baruch Hu tells Moshe, you asked for me to take somebody. He says, because you asked me to choose such an individual, because you asked for me to find such an individual, it's going to be in your honor that you're going to be part of it, that you're going to be part of the passing of the baton. Because what could have happened? Moshe died and everything happens after. He says, no, Moshe, it's going to happen in your lifetime. You're going to have a part of it. You're actually going to be the one that passes it on as an honor. And he says, take Yehoshua bin Nun and put him in your place. Because ani bochen libot uchlayot v'odeh rucho shel kol adam v'yodeh she'ani shehu ish asher ruach bo. Hashem says, I'm the one that is able to see the person's hearts, mind, thoughts, everything that is inside of him. I know the essence of every individual, and I know that he is the one, asher ruach bo. He's got that spirit, he's got that soul, he's got that neshama that is perfect for the role. Shel chokhmah, bina, etzah, gvura, yirat Hashem, ruach, nevuah. Wow, he's got everything. He's got wisdom, he's got intellect, he's got knowledge, he's got strength, he's got the fear of God, he's got the soul that is even able to tolerate prophecy. And he says, "Umilvat shezehu mushlam bakol." Even though that, and besides the fact that he's absolutely perfect for this role, on his own, individually, but we're going to give him a bonus. We're going to add something else to him. We're going to upgrade him. Ata tismoch yadecha alav v'tilamedemo od midot tovot v'dat titeah. You're going to give him a bonus. You're going to put your hand on him, and you're going to pass on to him your majesty, your knowledge, your ruach hakodesh, whatever it is that you're able to pass. You know, when Moshe Rabbeinu puts his hands on you and he gives you a bracha, who knows what happens over there behind the scenes? So he says, do that, and you put it on top of YEHOSHUA bin Nun, and that's going to give him an additional upgrade above and beyond what he brings to the table as an individual. Let him stand next to you, and let him give a drasha, let him give horaot, let him start to talk to the Jewish people next to you. So like that, the people won't say after your passing that, look, before Moshe died, he wouldn't open up his mouth. He was the shamash in the shul. He used to fix the carpets and fix the chairs. All of a sudden, Moshe is gone. Now he's opening up his mouth. Now he wants to do this. He wants to do that. No. We're not going to open up we're not going to let those clowns have the ability to say something like that about YEHOSHUA. While you're alive, next to you, he's going to be darshaning, and you're going to back him up. And by this, they'll know that he's a great man just like you. Now, this would lend YEHOSHUA the ability for people to look at him differently from the way they looked at him before. Because up until before, he was Moshe's apprentice, Moshe's assistant, Moshe's younger student, Moshe's top student. But when he's going to go through this process, he's going to become an ish gadol within the camp. And this is what it says, that give from your glory, or from your majesty. So they say, what is this majesty? Zekarun panim. Remember, Moshe Rabbeinu had what? His face used to glow. Remember, after he came down from up above, his face was glowing so much that he had to put a masveh. He had to put like a veil in front so the people won't see it.
Because of the ink.
Correct. Shaya Moshe zif panim ziv hashchina shaytam medaberet imo, because Moshe Rabbeinu had a glowing face because of the interaction that he would have with the Shekhinah that would speak to him directly. And give some of that illumination from your face that you got from the speaking to the Shekhinah directly by way of prophecy. Give some of that to YEHOSHUA, but not everything, but a little bit. And this is why Chazal tell us, Pnei Moshe kepnei chama, upnei YEHOSHUA kepnei levana. That's why they said that the face of Moshe is like a sun, that is constantly, a sun is always on, right? And YEHOSHUA, his face is like the moon. The moon sometimes is bright and sometimes it's not. Why would it be like that? Because that's the relationship between the sun and the moon. We know that the moon only reflection comes because of its position to the sun. And Moshe is the sun. He's constantly bright. He's constantly shining. YEHOSHUA is going to be shining or bright or illuminating or according to his position to Moshe Rabbeinu, which was his assistant. So he's not going to be like Moshe, he's going to be similar to him, but less. On המדרגה שנבואת משה הייתה נעלה ביותר, מדרגתו של יהושע. Obviously, לא קם בישראל נביא כמשה. He was the top of all prophets. YEHOSHUA is on a lower level. How? Well, they give us a way to understand it, like the sun and the moon. So, when he got this news, Moshe Rabbeinu was a little bit upset, a little bit disappointed that his children will not take over his role. Once again, Moshe is also, even though he's Ish Elokim, half man, half angel, but the half man part of Moshe Rabbeinu felt a little bit bad that his children are not taking over the role. So HaKadosh Baruch Hu tells him, Lema ata mitztaher? What are you sorry about? The greatness has not dissipated from your home. Because we said when they accounted for Aharon's children, Elu b'nei Aharon, Moshe v'Aaron, right? They said these are the children of Moshe v'Aaron. And the Rashi tells us, anybody who teaches somebody's child Torah, it's as if he becomes his father. Why? Because Aaron was their biological father, and Moshe became their spiritual father. He is the one that gives them life in this world. Moshe Rabbeinu is the one that gives them life in Olam Haba. So anybody who teaches Torah to children becomes like a parent to them. Why? Because he gives them life. Not in this world, but in the next world. So HaKadosh Baruch Hu uses that logic with him. And he says, Banav shel Aaron chashuvim kebanecha. All the children of Aaron are like your children. And look what they have. They have the Kehuna, they have the Kohen Gadol. That's yours. That belongs to you. VeYehoshua Itztarech le'Elazar. And Yeshua, like we said, he's not going to do anything without asking for advice from Elazar and the Urim Tumim. So you're involved in everything. You don't lose anything. What you wanted, the greatness you wanted, or the role that you wanted for your children, by default, it's actually happening through Aharon's children. So you're not losing out on anything. He says it's so whatever you were thought that you're losing from your family, that like once you're gone, that's it. You no longer have any sort of glory for your home, for your family. It's not so, because everything continues through Aharon HaKohen. He says not only that, he says also, don't forget your reward. You know, there's people that are leaders in the world, like Moshe Rabbeinu, like YEHOSHUA bin Nun, like the rabbis of our communities. Those guys get a tremendous reward for leading a group of people in the ways of Hashem. He's our spiritual mentor, spiritual leader. You know, the rabbis in our shul have a great responsibility, and they answer to all of the all the positive things that happens within the community. V'chas v'shalom, also for all the negative things that happen in the community. It's a great responsibility to be a rabbi. So we see, he says, don't forget that shamur lachem ba'olam haba. Schar gadol, he says a big reward is saved for you in the next world. That you are able to not only deal with the people be'emunah, v'sovlim kol haTorah shel Yisrael, that not only you're doing everything out of faith, but you also are able to do everything, all the heavy burden, the heavy lifting of the Jewish nation. And everything that you're doing is for the sake of heaven, L'shem Shamayim. Natal Moshe et Yehoshua, והרכיבו על ברכיו כבן יקיר, והעמידו שידרוש לפניו. Unbelievable. Moshe takes Yehoshua and he puts him on his lap like a son, and he tells him, stand up, give your first drasha to Am Yisrael.
Thank you.
Now Moshe and all the Jewish people are listening to the first drasha that YEHOSHUA bin Nun is giving. And we see that the Moshe, it gave him such joy and happiness from the fact that he gave all this honor to YEHOSHUA bin Nun. It was as if he took his own son and put it there, and the honor that a father feels when his own son takes over his position. And now HaKadosh Baruch Hu tells Moshe, this is the time where now you take your hands and you bless on YEHOSHUA bin Nun, and the passing of that illumination of the face or any additional spiritual prowess that he was going to get was through one hand, just like this, like give a bracha with one hand, the right hand, like Yaakov Avinu when he came to bless the children, the right hand goes under the head, right? One hand goes on, not two hands. He used one hand at a time. So same thing. Moshe Rabbeinu was supposed to give just one hand. But Moshe Rabbeinu was so happy and was so excited for the fact that there's a true good leader that's taken over. He put two hands on his hand and he gave him the bracha. V'hu samach alav shtei yadav. V'hu samach b'shal lemaleh oto chokmah b'bnat gedusha, in order to give him as much as possible for the upcoming role. That's Moshe Rabbeinu. Okay, we just graduated high school. We finished Pshat, we did some commentary. Now, Now when you start to think about it, YEHOSHUA bin Nun, who are you? Who are you that you got to such a level? How did you get there? I mean, the first time that we even get a glimpse of YEHOSHUA bin Nun is in the time with Amalek, when Moshe Rabbeinu all of a sudden calls on YEHOSHUA bin Nun, find me some soldiers in order to go to war with Amalek. That's the first time we see him. But what happened before? And then of course, I mean, let me just give some broad strokes. And then after that, we see that it was just his trusty assistant, trusty protege. And he was always there. When Moshe Rabbeinu would go up to the mountain, he'd sit right there and wait for 40 days and 40 nights. And you know, when Moshe Rabbeinu would give a class, he'd be the one that fixes the chairs and the rugs, and he would tidy up after. And he's the one that always overprotected of Moshe Rabbeinu. Later on, we'll see in a lot of different ways, which is great. But to be the next Moshe Rabbeinu, to be Moshe Rabbeinu number 2, to be the next leader of the Jewish people, to be selected by God, who are you, YEHOSHUA bin Nun? We don't know enough about you. It's like as if a rabbi has a favorite student, and all of a sudden the favorite student becomes Rosh Yeshiva. It's hard. It's hard. There has to be more qualifications. The resume needs to be beefier in order to get into that role. So we know that he had the core character that was befitting of a leader. His ruach was befitting, that he knew he would be patient, he would be tolerant, he would be understanding, he would have all these different things that would be worthy of it. He'd be a warrior, he'd be a good leader, he'd go to war first, he'd be in the front lines. Great.
Wasn't he one of the spies?
He was one of the spies. We'll get to that later. He had so many things, but nevertheless, where did you come from? Now, I'm just going to give you some sneak peeks into what's going to happen in the rest of the lesson. But you're going to notice that there's a tremendous amount of similarities between Moshe and YEHOSHUA that it's unbelievable. If you take the story, if you study the story of YEHOSHUA bin Nun's life, and if you study the story of Moshe Rabbeinu, and you line them up side by side, parallel, identical, twinning, as they say in today's terminology, hashtag twinning. Moshe and YEHOSHUA, twinning. Everything that happened to YEHOSHUA happened to Moshe. It's uncanny. And when you look into it, the more you dig, the more you see. And literally out of the 20, 30, 40 things that I came up with, I'm only going to share maybe the top 10 because there's no time for everything. But you'll see. And then later on, you see that YEHOSHUA is also very, very similar to another great person in Jewish history, which is his Gilgul, which we'll talk about a little bit later. And even more interesting is who gets this great man? Who's his wife? Who's the wife of YEHOSHUA bin Nun? And why is she his wife? And what about their children? Meaning, you know, the minute you start to, it's almost like we want a biography through Parashat Shavua and with all the supporting characters around it. So sit back and relax, buckle up so we don't have to scrape you off the ceiling at the end of the class. Unbelievable, unbelievable stuff about YEHOSHUA bin Nun. First things first. One of the things that we deal with YEHOSHUA is a name change that he goes through as well. I wanted to share this with you. Here. YEHOSHUA is mentioned for the first time in the war of Amalek in Refidim. And he was actually the one that led this war. So the first time that we're introduced to YEHOSHUA, what is he? He's a warrior. He's a soldier. He's a sergeant. He's a leader in the Jewish nation. Later on, he's famously known, like Ronnie told us, that he was, Leo told us, that he was one of the 12 tribes as well. That's what we know about him. and he is one of the two out of the 12 that came back with a positive report on the land. Caleb ben Yefuneh and Yoshua bin Nun are the only ones that spoke positively about the land of Israel, and it's going to be incredible at the end of the class. You'll see why Yoshua bin Nun had so much love for the land of Israel. And later on also he's famously known for adding a letter Yud to his name, because originally he was Hoshea bin Nun, and later on he became Yehoshua bin Nun. Hoshea ben Nun, and later on he became Yehoshua bin Nun, and we'll talk about that as well. And we know that also Moshe Rabbeinu. We'll talk about that later. Let's start with this. This is an incredible midrash. The first time I read it, I think maybe 6 or 7 years ago. Ma'am Loez brings it. I found it in a different place. I saw it brought in a book called Rav Po'alim Lagaon Avraham, and also brought in the book by Rabbeinu Nisim Gaon about the birth of Yehoshua bin Nun. It says, obviously we're in Egypt right now. That's where Yehoshua bin Nun was born. And the mother of Yehoshua was told by the stargazers that the son that she's going to give birth to is going to kill his father. Meaning, the son that she's going to give birth to is going to kill her husband. ובנימוסי מצרים היה שהאיש המחייב הריגה למלכות רשות התליין לקח אשת הנהרג. And he says, the way he's going to die is by way of hanging. And the law of the land is when a person dies by hanging, what the law is the person that hangs that individual takes over his wife. He takes over that family of the person that he hangs. Umasula siman. He says, and I'm going to give you a sign. I'm going to give you a sign. Kshiavo ben alisauta. He says that the time comes when your husband is going to get hung. It's going to be by your own son. His son is going to kill him in the fashion of hanging. And then your son is going to be the one who's supposed to marry you, because that's the law of the land of Egypt. Kshiavo ben alisauta. He says, and when that time comes, itmaleu hadadin shelach halav vayzov la'aretz. He says, and that when the time comes that he's going to take over the family, and he's going to want to make an advance on you, he's going to think you're his new wife. But in reality, you're his mother. What's going to be the sign? It says that the breast will overflow with milk and they'll flow over all over on the floor. When she heard this, lakha bena v'shichato layam. She says, as soon as she heard this, she took the baby and she put him into the water. Umitzri echad etzilo. And as she put him into the water, an Egyptian saved him. And where did he bring him? To Bet Paro, to the house of Pharaoh. V'nitgadal sham ad shene'esa tilyon lamech Mitzrayim. And he grew up in the castle with Paro until he became the executioner. The executioner in Egypt. Meaning whenever Paro tafas kriza, as they say, he got angry, and all of a sudden he wants to hang somebody. Who would be hanging it? Yehoshua bin Nun. That was his job. All of a sudden comes that fateful day. V'aviv shel Yehoshua itchayev hariga. I don't know, something, his father, Nun, right? Yehoshua ben Nun. He's the son of Nun. So Nun, his father, did something that the king didn't like, and he was supposed to be hung. What did Yehoshua bin Nun do? Unbeknownst to him that it's his own father, he hung his father. And then when he went, according to the law of the land, to go and marry the woman, which happened to be his mother, his mother told him, wait. I know exactly what's happening over here. Let me tell you what happened. 20 years ago, when I was pregnant with you, the stargazers told me this was going to happen. That you're going to kill your own father, and at that time you're going to try to take over the family and be my husband, but you're really my son. And what's the sign? The sign is the overflowing of milk. And she's telling him the story. ופירש ממנה. He left her alone. He let it go. He believed her story. And that's half of the story. 1 second. First things first, I told you there's going to be similarities between Moshe and Yehoshua. What do we have? First things first, he was thrown into the Nile. Secondly, he was taken from the Nile by an Egyptian. Thirdly, he grew up in the castle like Moshe Rabbeinu. Right? Now, second half of the story. ואני שמעתי מתלמיד חכם אחד קצת בעניין אחר המעשה הזה. He says there's another side story. כשהשליחתו עמו לים, he says when his mother threw him to the water in order for her husband to stay alive so he won't get killed, ואימן השם דג גדול ובלע את יהושע. He says there came a huge fish and swallowed the Yehoshua that was in the Nile. והיה מתפלל יהושע אל השם ממי הדגה. And Yehoshua was praying from the depths of the fish to HaKadosh Baruch Hu, כמו אצל יונה, just like the story of יונה. ויאמר השם לדג, ויקע את יהושע נביא אל היבשה. Hashem told the fish to throw up Yehoshua, and Yehoshua spit the fish spit Yehoshua out, and he put him on the land. ועל כך נקרא Ben Nun. And that's why it's called Yehoshua Ben Nun. Why? In Aramaic, the way you say fish is Nun. The word for fish in Aramaic is Nun. So what's his name? Yehoshua Ben Nun. Yehoshua, the son of the fish. Why? Because the fish swallowed him and threw him up. V'chen targum dag nun. First, a little bit of a layer of understanding Yehoshua's upbringing, background story, and also this name. Where did he get this name? Yehoshua Ben Nun. Pshat level, first grade level. Nun is his father's name. His name is Nun. Second understanding is that Nun is an Aramaic word for fish that goes with the Midrash that says that a fish swallowed him and later on threw him up, so it's Yehoshua bin Nun. However, there's more. There's more to the name of Yehoshua. It says, in the story of the spies, it says, אלה שמות האנשים אשר שלח משה לתור את הארץ, ויקרא משה להושע בן נון יהושע. So, right before Moshe Rabbeinu sent the 12 spies to Israel, he made a name change. He changed Hoshea bin Nun, it's his name, from Hoshea to Yehoshua. He added a Yud. Why? He didn't do that for anyone else. That's number one. Number two, why specifically the Yud? So it says, the Yud that was added to Yehoshua is actually the Yud that belonged to Sarai Imenu. Remember, Sarah, her name was not Sarah, it was Sarai, right? The problem is, she was barren. So HaKadosh Baruch Hu told Avraham Avinu, your name is no longer Avram, it's going to be Avraham, with a Hey. Sarai, he told her, you're not going to be Sarai, you're going to be Sarah. What did he do? He took the Yud and he split it into two. Because Yud is 10 and Hey is 5. He says, no, your Yud doesn't work. You need a Hey and Avraham needs a Hey. By the way, we also know that it's very good to name your girls with a letter Hey, preferably at the end of their name. Why? Segula lepiria verivia. It's good for zivug, it's good for having children, and it's good to be successful, because sometimes people get stuck with not finding a right zivug, or people get stuck with not having children because they're missing the letters in their name. One day we'll do a class about the letters, or maybe a series about the letters. But the letters have a lot of power. In a woman, especially the letter Hey. So it says, Sarai, you can't have children, you need the Hey. So he got rid of the Yud. And Avram became Avraham, Sarai became Sarah. The Yud goes up to the Shamayim. The Yud goes up to the Shamayim and says, what's going to be with me? I was just part of a tzadeket Sarai Menu. You got rid of me? So HaKadosh Baruch Hu tells the Yud, don't worry, I have a place for you. Where does he bring it back? He gives it to Yehoshua. The Yud in Sarai's name is now in Yehoshua's name. Why? So it's very interesting. We have to do learn a little bit about the character of Sarai. Sarai Menu was a very strong character. As soon as she saw that Ishmael is not a good influence on her son, no nonsense, right away, Abraham, get your wife, get your child, and get him out of the house. I don't want to see them around here. Abraham is, why? You told me to take her as a wife. Oh, this is my first boy. Please, maybe they can stick around. No way, Jose. Get him out of here. She was stern, she was strong, she was direct, she was overprotective, she took control. So Moshe Rabbeinu says, you're about to now go into the land of Israel. I already know that these guys are troublemakers. That's number one. Number two, he was already going to foresee that he's going to be the leader, and you're going to deal with a lot of tough characters in the Jewish people. Am Sheorif. You know what you need, part of your character? You need a little bit of Sarai Menu in your life. You need the Yud in your from her name to be part of you. Why? You need that upgrade. You need the Yud of Sarah the Yud of Sarai in order to give you the right character traits, the right leadership upgrades that you need by going to Eretz Yisrael to be part of the Meraglim, as well as to manage the Jewish people in the future. By the way, just to show you that not one letter gets wasted in the Torah, but not even one nekuda. Because remember, what's his first name? Hoshea ben Nun. Okay, the word ben has a segol underneath it, right? However, if I want to say the word Yehoshua, when I put the Yud over there, what do I have to put underneath it? A Shva. You know what's a Shva? 2 dots. So if I take a segol, which is 3 dots, and I take 2 dots from it, what's left? 1. That's a chirik. And that's why it's called Yehoshua bin Nun. Because the segol got split into a Shva and a chirik, the Yud needed the Shva, and the Ben got stayed with the chirik, and that's why it's called Yehoshua bin Nun. Furthermore, so here's something very interesting. It says in Abraham's household there was a big argument, a philosophical argument in the house of Abraham. What's the right approach to deal with the nations of the world? Because keep in mind, we have Abraham and Sarah. They're the beginning of the Jewish nation. They're forming us. They're telling us what's the right way to interact with the rest of the world. So Abraham and Sarah are sitting together. Maybe they're having a koste in Sheba. Maybe they're sitting down and they're having like a Melav Malka with his Malka. And they're like sitting together and they're talking and they're saying, what do you think? How should we treat all the nations of the world? Avraham Avinu says, Ohev et kol ha'enoshut kula. I love all God's children. Ish chesed, right? He's a man of chesed. He didn't want any sort of special treatment from all the rest of the other nations. He says, I love all God's children. Let's treat everybody the same way. That was Abraham's approach. Sarai Imenu says, she was a nationalist. What's a nationalist? Meaning, Am Yisrael is Am Yisrael. It's not cookie cutter. Hashem didn't make everybody cookie cutter. Yeah, Abraham, but I can make everybody like this thing. So Akol Tov V'Yafeh, but there's one unique nation, Am Segula, Beni Bechori Israel, that has to be completely different from all the nations. And Sarai Menu says, Gurash Ishmael Bet Avraham Avinu. He says that from here we see that the difference of opinion, that we are different from all the different nations, and that we can't accept everyone to be the exact same way, is in the way that Sarai Menu carried herself when there was the first problem with Ishmael and Yitzchak. She says, get rid of them. ששרה אימנו מסמל לאומנות, וזו הסיבה שהעוברה מצרה אימנו ליהושע. He says that's the reason why the Yud went from Sarah Imenu to Yoshua, because he was the one that's going to show that the Jewish people are different from the rest of the world. He was going to be the one that's going to finish the job. Moshe Rabbeinu did the preparation in the desert. But who's going to live with them in the land of Israel and show that the Jewish people are different from everyone else? Yoshua. You need Sarai's Yud. Furthermore, I want to continue with this Yud, but we need a nice introduction to the Yud. It seems like I can't put this book down anymore. Mishnat HaGilgulim. It's too nice. It's too exciting. In order for us to get to understanding the Yud in Yoshua's name, we have to go to his previous lifetime, get a couple of points over there, and then we'll come back to the Yud again. It says that Yoshua is the Gilgul of Yosef. Yoshua in a previous lifetime was Yosef HaTzadik. It says, בספרי שש זוגות ששנותיהם שוות. There were 6 couples that they lived the exact same age. Rivka and Kehat lived the same amount of time. I believe it was 127. Levi ve'Amram, I'm not sure how long they lived for. Yosef ve'Yoshua, shneim chayu 110 shanim. Yosef and Yoshua both lived 110 years. It says in this week's parasha, we see that the chokhmah, the wisdom, and the ruach, and the spirit that's inside Yoshua, what was the wording? VeYoshua bin Nun maleh ruach chokhmah. That Yoshua bin Nun was filled with the spirit and wisdom. What does it say about Yosef? It says, Vayomer Paro el Yosef, Achre hodia Elokim otcha et kol zot, en navon vechacham kamocha. The same wisdom that was mentioned on Yosef is mentioned on Yoshua, and it continues to say with Yosef, Vayomer Paro el avadav, hanimtza kaze ish asher ruach Elokim bo. Remember that we were trying to make a distinction earlier on why that word ruach Elokim bo, that Hashem with it, sheyesh bo ruach. What is this ruach? This special spirit, this special neshama. So we see over here that it was said one time before about who? Yosef. And it was said again in this week's parasha about who? Yoshua. And ironically, why would that match up? Because they are the reincarnation of one another. As a matter of fact, Yosef was famously known to be Matzliach. Vayi Hashem et Yosef, Vayi ish Matzliach. Kol asher hu oseh Hashem Matzliach beyado. We see that the word Matzliach, being successful, was constantly mentioned when it came to Yosef. When it came to Yoshua, if you go to the prophets, the first book of the prophets, which is Yoshua, it says in one of the first pesukim, the 8th pasuk of the first chapter, it says, Leman tishmor la'asot kechol ha'katuv bo, Ki as tatzliach derachecha ve'az taskil. It talks about over there where Yoshua gets the instruction to follow everything that's written in the 5 books of Moses. Why? Ki as tatzliach. Keep in mind, these are not words or concepts that are constantly found with different people. So when it's mentioned somewhere before and mentioned somewhere else again, we have to connect the dots because there is a connection. Because there's a reason why those things have said about those people specifically. Here, ironically, they're each other's Gilgul. Now we're going to get to the Yud. When Moshe Rabbeinu blessed Yoshua, what was his blessing before he left to Israel to be part of the Meraglim? Ya Yoshiacha Me'atzat Meraglim. Ya is the letter Yud and the letter Hey. He says God's name of Yud and Hey is the one that's going to give you salvation from the evil ideas that the spies are going to come back with. So he blessed him with the Yud and the Hey. So we know that his name was Hoshea. So he already had the Hey over there. So in order to get the full blessing of the Yud and the Hey, what was he missing? Just the Yud. So it says, Ya Yoshiacha, you open him the Yud and the Hey, because now in Yehoshua, he has the letters Yud and Hey. Okay. We know that Yosef also had an additional letter added to his name. What does it say about Yosef? Edut beYehosef Samo. Remember, that night when Malach Gabriel came and downloaded the 70 languages into Yosef's brain, you remember the Midrash? And after he got that upgrade, he was no longer called Yosef, he was called Yehosef. That Hey was an upgrade. And what was that upgrade? Remember, he wanted to go bury his father. Before he went to go bury his father, Paro didn't want to let him go. So the only way you could take over the kingdom in Egypt is if you spoke 70 languages. So Paro had 70 stairs to his chair. And you're able to go up one stair if you know one language. So Moshe Rabbeinu started with Kif Halek, Arabic. Como ça va? French. Como estás? Spanish. And he went on and 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 on. And Paro is getting nervous. He gets to 70th. He said all the languages. And then he comes and says, Mashlumcha? He's like, well, he knows one language more than me. He could take over the kingdom. So Yosef says, you see that I can take over. But you can stay. I'm just going to go bury my father in Israel and I'll come back. So during that time, during this whole story, is Edut Yosef Samo, Safat lo yadati ishma. That's a pasuk in Tehillim. What's Safat lo yadati? The language I didn't know, he was able to learn overnight with the Malach Gabriel. So we see that Yehosef, he has the what? The Yud and the Hey. Yehoshua, he has the letter Yud and the Hey. That's why Moshe Rabbeinu, when he blessed him, he says, Ya Yoshiacha Ma'atzat Regalim. The letter Yud and the Hey is going to save you. And where did he get the Yud? Where did he get the Hey from? From Yosef, from the previous Gilgul. And where does he get the Yud from? Yehoshua in this Gilgul. Since we're on the subject of Yosef and Yoshua, we'll add a few more bonuses. Because why would Moshe say Ya Yoshiacha? Why specifically Ya Yoshiacha Ma'atzat Miraglim? They shouldn't be participating with the plot of the spies. Moshe Yada Shirshou Gilgulo Shel Yosef. Moshe knew that he was the reincarnation of Yosef. Shotzi Dibat Achivra. Remember, he spoke Lashon Hara about his brothers. And he says, maybe he's going to do the exact same mistake and will speak Lashon Hara about the land of Israel. Meaning, you already from a previous Gilgul have a problem. You speak Lashon Hara. Last time you said it about your brothers. Maybe you're going to do Lashon Hara about Eretz Yisrael. So he said, well, I got to give him something to protect him from Lashon Hara. By the way, that's why when people come back in a reincarnation, what's the most difficult thing for them? The thing that they failed with in the previous life. That's the tikkun. There's a person, he can't, it's so hard for him not to steal. Why? That's his tikkun. In a previous life he stole. There's a person, it's so hard for him not to lie. Why? In a previous life he lied. So whatever was the sin that he was failing in the previous life, in the next lifetime, it becomes amplified, stronger, something that he deals with even more. That's why also sometimes with arayot, all of a sudden the guy can't, he has such a desire for this and for that. Why? Because in the previous lifetime he failed, his tikkun, that it's double of a challenge in this lifetime. Because he has to make a tikkun for this life and for the previous life. So Moshe Rabbeinu tells them, because you were Yosef and you said Lashon Hara in a previous life, what do I have to do? Make sure you don't say Lashon Hara about the land of Israel. Ya Oshiacha Ma'atzat Meraglim. Furthermore, do you remember Do you remember when Yosef was the king of Egypt? What did he tell his brothers when they came in front of him before he revealed himself to them? What did he say? He said, what did Yosef tell his brothers when they came to Egypt? He says, what are you? What are you? Spies? What are you, meraglim? Remember? He called them spies. So it says, Yosef chashad ba'achim shem meraglim. And now Moshe is sending Yoshua to be a meragel. He says, now what is it? It's the tikkun. You told your brothers that maybe that they are spies. Now you go make your tikkun as a spy in the land of Israel. Furthermore, Yosef, what was his blessing? Yosef's blessing was fish. It says, when in Masechet Brachot, it says on the 20th page on the first side, Vayadugu larov bekerev haaretz, that the blessing will be that the Jewish people will procreate in the land. There will be a large amount of a population. Ma dagim shebayam mai mechasim aleim ve'en ayin hara sholetet bahem. Just like fish in the water covers them and nobody can see them, so ayin hara cannot control them because they're not visible. Av zar'o shel Yosef and ayin hara sholetet bahem. Similarly, anyone who's from the progeny of Yosef, ayin hara does not touch them. Anybody who comes from the tribe of Yosef, there's no ayin hara. Yoshua, who is the reincarnation of Yosef, what is it called? Yoshua bin Nun. What do we say Nun is? Nun is fish. It says over here, Yoshua bin Nun, Baramit Hudag. That's another reason why it's called bin Nun, to hint that he is from the Gilgul of Yosef. Two more things. It says, remember the dream of Yosef? How he said that the moon and the sun are going to bow down to me? Remember that? So if you read, I don't know, some of us don't make it past Chamisha Chumshei Torah. You know there's 24 books in Tanakh. You know that, right? After this, there's 21 more books. 19 more books. The first book after Tanakh is Yoshua. If you read in Yoshua, one of the battles that Yoshua went to fight was the battle where he made the sun and the moon stand still. So just like Yosef said, the sun and the moon will bow down to me, Yoshua, when he comes back in the Gilgul, the sun and the moon didn't move for him. Another tikkun. Lastly, and this one is a beautiful one, we know that the splitting of the sea was in the merit of who? Many things.
Yosef.
There was also, I think it's a beautiful class we did here last year. The sea split because, and we gave I think maybe 10 or 15 reasons why the sea split.
Yeah.
Remember, that was a beautiful class.
Yeah,
So one of the reasons why the sea split is because they saw the bones of Yosef. The sea split because they saw the bones of Yosef. Why? Because it says, Hayam Ra'av Vayanos, right? What do you say in Hallel? Ra'ayam Vayanos is... Give me Hallel. Give me a Siddur quickly.
Ra'ayam ve'anos.
Ra'ayam ve'anos, ha'yarden yisov la'achor. Beautiful, that's the pasuk. Ra'ayam ve'anos. The ocean saw and it fled. What did it see? It saw the bones of Yosef. Why? What was all of a sudden they showed the bones of Yosef and the sea split. What happened? Because when Eshet Potiphar came to seduce Yosef, what did Yosef do? He ran away. She grabbed his shirt. She ripped it off of him. He ran away from her. Vayanus, vayazov begado be'adav, vayanos achutza. He left his clothes behind and he ran away from her. Because he ran away from Eshet Potiphar, the water ran away from his bones and we merited to the splitting of the sea. Ra'a hayam vayanos. No, Ra'a hayam vayanos.
הירדן ישוב לאחור.
והירדן יסוב לאחור. That's Yoshua. In the Sefer Yoshua, when the Jewish people want to enter the land, they have to pass by the Jordan River. How do you pass by a river? The river split. Just like the ocean split for Moshe, the river split for who? For Yoshua. So now, when you sing that line in Hallel, Ra'ayam vayasov. That's Yosef. Vayarden Isov Le'achor, that's his next Gilgul, which was Yehoshua. So there's the sea split 2 times. I'm sorry, the sea split from Moshe. I'm sorry, the sea split in the merit of Yosef's bones. That's one splitting of the sea. Yehoshua is the Gilgul of Yosef. And when Yehoshua led the Jewish people into the land of Israel, they had to cross the Jordan River. And when they came to the Jordan River, the Jordan River split. And they walked through it. And the splitting of the sea and the splitting of the Jordan River is found in the Hallel, in a pasuk that says, so we say, and by the way, what's the difference? In the ocean, it's split. In the Jordan River, the waters get going up. They went up. It became like a wall. They didn't split. It actually, it's like a river is different. A river flows. So,
it's like
it just kept building up until the game, and then the whole thing dropped.
So what's the translation, the physical translation on the second part of the Hallel?
like by a sword, like he got.
That the Jordan River turned backwards its waters in order for the Jewish people to walk through it. Yes. Now, let's continue. Even though that we saw a lot of similarities between Yosef and Yehoshua by way of Gilgulim, which was very interesting, and also gave us a little bit more insight into that Yud, let's pivot to the similarities between Yehoshua and Moshe Rabbeinu. This is going to be extremely interesting. Earlier in the class we saw that the same way that Moshe was put into the Nile, similarly Yehoshua was put into the Nile. Just like one was pulled out, so was the other one. They both lived in the castle with Paro in Egypt. There's so many over here. I'm just going to give you, broad strokes. If you want the details in the Pesukim, you'd have to go inside. I'm willing to share my notes with people if anybody wants to copy them. It says, Yehoshua split the Jordan River, Moshe Rabbeinu split the ocean. Now again, we're doing similarities between Moshe and Yehoshua. Yehoshua was approached by an angel, and that was the Gilui Shel Malach. That's the revelation that he had, that he's interacting with God's angel. The first revelation that Moshe Rabbeinu got was the Gilui Shel Asneh. Remember when he was talking to the burning bush. So they both had this revelation with a Kadosh Baruch Hu, one through Asneh, one through an angel. Moshe sent spies into the land of Israel. Yehoshua also sent spies to the land of Israel. Whenever there is a hardship with the Jewish nation, Moshe Rabbeinu would fall on his face and begin to pray. Similarly, he would also fall on his face and start to pray for the Jewish people. Yehoshua at the end of his days is called Eved Hashem, and Moshe Rabbeinu at the end of his life is called Eved Hashem, the servant of God. Moshe, at the time of his death, his whole purpose is that they will be governed, ruled, led by a leader that will turn the Jewish people into Ovdei Hashem. Similarly, in the same way that they would serve Hashem when he was alive, similarly was Yehoshua's intention when he was leading them and when he left them at the end of his life. The Jewish people were very, very feared and exalted amongst the nations, and during the time of Moshe. Similarly was the time when Yehoshua was leading them. Splitting of Yamsu, the splitting of the sea, splitting of the Jordan River. With Moshe Rabbeinu, the falling of the man began, and with Yehoshua, the end of the man was with him as well. When Moshe met the presence of God by the burning bush, he took off his shoes. Yehoshua also, when he met that holy angel, he also took off his shoes. Moshe had a staff, Yehoshua had a staff.
not the same staff, no?
I don't know. I don't have an answer to that, but they both have staff. Mateh beyado. I don't know if it's the same one. Moshe was commanded to take the Jewish people to Gerizim ve'eval, of what would happen over there with the blessings and the curses on Mount Gerizim and Har Eval. Yehoshua carried out that ceremony of the blessing and the curses on Har Eval. Whoever follows is blessed, whoever doesn't follow is cursed, if you remember. Moshe Rabbeinu promised a portion of the land of Israel to Kalev ben Yefuneh. YEHOSHUA bin Nun is the one that carried out giving that portion of land to Kalev ben Yefuneh. Moshe Rabbeinu instructed that the land will be given out in a lottery. YEHOSHUA bin Nun is the one that carried it out by way of lottery. Moshe Rabbeinu had a farewell address. YEHOSHUA bin Nun also had a farewell address. Moshe and his burial was mentioned in the Torah, and there was a hesped. Similarly, Yehoshua and his burial was mentioned in the Torah. Aharon HaKohen, when he passed away, who dealt with it? Moshe. And also when the passing of Elazar HaKohen, his son, when he was a Kohen Gadol, he also dealt with it. So Moshe dealt with Aharon HaKohen Gadol, and Yehoshua dealt with Elazar Kohen Gadol. I mean, I just read roughly about 15 similarities where you can literally say that they are twinning, that they're doing the exact same thing as the other one did. Now, which is very, very interesting, all these similarities, because you can see that the successor of Moshe Rabbeinu was a good one. He learned well. Now, even though there were a lot of similarities, there were some differences that are worth mentioning. There's some similar differences that are worth mentioning. Moshe Rabbeinu died at 120. YEHOSHUA bin Nun died at what age? We already said it. 110, like who?
Yosef.
Like Yosef. Very good. So why over there was different? Why didn't YEHOSHUA bin Nun live to 120 like Moshe Rabbeinu? Interesting. It says over here. HaKadosh Baruch Hu gave a promise to YEHOSHUA bin Nun. He says, "Kasher haiti im Moshe, ehyeh imach." The same way that I'm going to be with Moshe, I'll be with you. So that would say that he would keep him alive to 120 as well. What was the problem? It says that when Hashem told Moshe Rabbeinu, "Nekom nikmat bnei Yisrael met hamidyanim achar te'asef el amecha." This week's parasha, we just read the pasuk. Go and avenge our loss from the Midyanim, and after this war, it's the end of you. After this war is when you're going to be passing away. Now, even though that he just got the news that he's going to be passing, what did Moshe do? Immediately he got to it. Nizdarez. Immediately he got to it and he says, "Vayishlach ota Moshe." Moshe right away started to appoint people to get ready for this war. However, when Yehoshua came to the land of Israel, what was his job? His job was to go to war with the 31 kings that were living in the land of Israel. What did Yehoshua say? Im ani hurga miyad, miyad ani met. He says, if I do the job quickly, what's going to happen? I'm going to die quickly. The same way that happened to Moshe Rabbeinu. He finished with the job in a few days, and in a few days he passed away. He started to delay the war. As it says in the pasuk, Yamim Rabim Asa Yehoshua et kol hamelachim ha'ele milchama. He extended the war. He took his time with it. Yamim Rabim, a lot of days he went to war. HaKadosh Baruch Hu says, V'kach hasita, hareini mekatze shnotecha yud shanim. He says, because you did it like that, I'm going to shorten your life by 10 years. Interesting, yud shanim. There's that yud again. It pops up. 10 years. And this is also a beautiful pasuk that we have in Tehillim. For those of you that read Tehillim, it says, Rabot machshavot belevish, v'atzat Hashem, hi takum. People think and think and think and think. You know what's really going to happen at the end? What Hashem wants. Moshe Rabbeinu said what? Moshe Rabbeinu. Yehoshua said, let me prolong the war. I'll live longer because the war will go longer. I'll live longer. Hashem says, oh, that's what you're thinking? I'm giving you 10 years less on your life. Instead of 120, 110.
That's what I say.
Also,
We need a translation.
about what? Harbot machshavot. Usually, a person thinks a lot about, he plots, he thinks, he plans. But what's really going to come into play? God's thoughts, what Hashem wants. So a person can plan, or a lot, the famous anecdote that he says, we plan and God laughs, right? Okay. So we said a lot of similarities, but a couple of differences. One of the differences was the way he managed himself when it came to war, and he didn't live to 120 to 110. Here's another one. Over here, there's two differences. It's worth mentioning as well. Two things that Yehoshua did that Moshe Rabbeinu did not like. One was when he appointed the elders, the Skenim, and one in the time of the Egel. Why? When Moshe Rabbeinu appointed the 70 elders, if you recall, there were two called Eldad and Medad that started to prophesy within the camp. Yehoshua says, you want me to take care of them? He says in the Pasuk. No, it's right here. He says, Adoni Moshe Kaleem. He tells him, you want to kill them? You want to destroy them? So Moshe answers Yehoshua, Hamekaneh Tali? You're jealous for me? You want me to kill somebody because you think that they're doing something wrong? אומר לו יהושע, בך אני מתקנא, הלוואי בני יוציא בך, הלוואי כל ישראל יוצא בך. He says, I wish that everyone will be like you. I wish my son will be like you. Yes, I'm jealous of who you are. So Moshe Rabbeinu was telling him, you're jealous of me? He tells him, ומי ייתן כל העם נביאים השם. He says, let it be that the whole people be Nevi'im like me. Then we all are holy, then we all fulfilled our... There's not supposed to be one Moshe Rabbeinu. May it be that we're all Moshe Rabbeinus. So he didn't like that when somebody was finally getting to a higher level, he said, should I get rid of them? Like there's only supposed to be one Moshe. He said, no. Everybody's supposed to be like a Moshe Rabbeinu. Everybody's supposed to go to the highest level possible in spirituality. That's not the right approach. Moshe didn't like that.
Maybe got it later when Moshe gave him with the hands. Maybe
he gave him that additional upgrade of understanding. Could be. What happened with the Egel? Yes?
The Mate also we learn in Kabbalah that is giving Moshe the highest level that he lived, that is connection to the lower level, us.
Okay.
That's the Mate, that's the job of the Mate, to connect between the higher level
Yefet.
of Moshe.
Maybe it's like the Vav HaChibur, the shape of it. Could be.
Yeah.
Very nice. Okay, and what happened with the Egel? What is something that Yehoshua did and Moshe did not like? That was their differences. When Moshe Rabbeinu came down from the heavens and he started to hear all the noise in the Machaneh, the people partying, the women with their hair loose, and they're making all the dancing around the Egel. Vayishma Yehoshua et kol ha'am bera'a. Yehoshua hears the noise. Amar lo Moshe, Adam she'atid להנהיג שרה על 60 ריבו, אינו יודע להבחין בין קול לקול. He categorized that noise as something as like they did something bad. Like it looks like they're doing something bad. Maybe they're doing something bad. Like maybe. Moshe Rabbeinu says, you're about to govern, you're about to lead 600,000 people. And you know the difference between a party that is Hashem Shamayim and a party that's L'Avodah Zarah? He says, no, something is off over here. You should know already that when you hear people yelling and screaming and partying, does this sound like a Jewish party or is it like a techno acid party? What's going on over here? Which one's which? Mashiach, 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 or you hear boom, 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 boom. You should know the difference, right? So he says he didn't like that. Those were the two differences that he didn't like about the future leader. That these points shouldn't have been missed. However, remember at the beginning of the class we said, but what's so special about YEHOSHUA bin Nun? Like up until now, great. We know how he was raised. We know his Gilgul. We know that he had a lot of things in his leadership qualities that were similar to Moshe Rabbeinu. But what was so great on his resume that you say you can't pass this up? This is the guy for the job. What was his key midah? What was the best thing about him that got him the job at the end of the day? So it says that the best quality about Yehoshua bin Nun was his bitul to Moshe Rabbeinu and bitul to the Torah. He nullified himself to the Torah giant of that generation, which is Moshe Rabbeinu, and he nullified himself for the learning of Torah and the teaching of Torah. I'm going to run you down through 5 or 6 different points that is worth mentioning.
What do you mean by nullifying? That he nullified? What do you mean?
That he is fully committed to his rabbi, fully committed to the Torah and everything in it. He has nothing from himself in it. He gave himself over fully, as if he's no longer an individual. He's fully committed to anything that Moshe wants from him. He's fully committed to anything that the Torah wants from him. He's fully committed to the way of God. Nothing from him anymore.
What is Gilgul? Like you said?
Gilgul is a reincarnation. Okay, so let's start. It says, remember when we said that that Yehoshua was the famous one that fixed up the synagogue with the chairs and the books and all that. יהושע הגיע לרמה גבוהה מאוד של ביטול עצמו לעומת משה רבנו מצד הרגשתו הפנימית. He says that Yehoshua, he gave to a very high level of nullifying himself towards Moshe Rabbeinu from an internal emotion feeling that he had towards his service to Moshe. And furthermore, he was so connected to his rabbi that it says that Yehoshua would go outside of the tent and he would grab big pieces of man and he would bring them to Moshe Rabbeinu and say, "This is for you." Meaning, he was a great apprentice. He was the rabbi's right-hand man, and anything that the rabbi wanted, the rabbi got, and anything the rabbi needed, he was right there for it. I can tell you, I've witnessed this myself.
Wow.
Not on a level of Yehoshua to Moshe Rabbeinu, but Baruch Hashem, my rabbi, Rav Yisrael Abedje Shlita, he has a few people that travel with him when he goes overseas, and they're really right there. And you learn a lot about the rabbi, and you learn a lot about his students when you spend 24, 48 hours with them. I happen to be driving with them or going with them to certain places, so you spend 6, 7, 8, 10, sometimes 24, sometimes 48 hours with them if you're on a trip with them, and you can see that they're right there. They know that the rabbi right now needs his book, and the rabbi right now needs his coffee, or needs his rest, or needs a towel for the mikveh. The rabbi needs to go be here for 20 minutes and go over there for 30 minutes, and there's a person waiting for him right now that he must speak. You can see that the assistants or the students, they're living and breathing the rabbi's life. And all they want to do is just assist the rabbi to be successful as possible in his position. I saw a small, I'm telling you, just a small version of that with my rabbi and his assistants, but you can see Yehoshua had that to the highest level. Furthermore, this hidbatlut, this nullifying himself in order to serve the rabbi Moshe Rabbeinu, this is what put him over the top to be the leader of the Jewish people. Furthermore, it says the Jewish people needed someone, they needed a manhig, שיהיה נאמן לחלוטין לתורתו של משה רבנו. Also, the person who is going to that's going to go that's going to lead the Jewish people after Moshe Rabbeinu, he had to be what? Ne'eman, faithful lechalutin, complete faithfulness, complete dedication to the Torah of Moshe Rabbeinu, not to deviate from what Moshe Rabbeinu taught. Meaning, could be that a new leader comes and all of a sudden he has his own ideas, but Yehoshua would not change a single letter, a single nekuda from the Torah that Moshe Rabbeinu wrote. He was the one that would continue Moshe Rabbeinu's Torah the right way. There was no better candidate than him to keep it an ironclad learning and teaching in Am Yisrael, like Yehoshua bin Nun. Meaning, the fact that he was a faithful servant for 40 years to Moshe Rabbeinu, and he was around all the time for all the learning, for all the teaching, for all the serving, learning from Moshe Rabbeinu. Keep in mind, when you're around a spiritual giant for 40 years, you become a spiritual giant yourself because you copy what you see. You tell me who your friends are, I'll tell you who you are. It's your environment that affects you. It's your environment that forms you. If you're going to be all day around Moshe Rabbeinu, you know what you're going to be? Moshe Rabbeinu number 2. That's why Yehoshua got the job. Because of that, because he was going to be ne'eman lechalutin letorata shel Moshe Rabbeinu, because he was going to be completely faithful to the road that Moshe Rabbeinu trailblazed with the Torah Am Yisrael, Masechet Baba Batra on the 85th page on the first side says, "V'natata me'otcha alav," when Hashem commanded Moshe Rabbeinu to put his splendor, his glory upon him, his majesty. Ve'lo kol hodecha. He says, not all of it. Why? Because Moshe Rabbeinu was able to give him just what he needed in order to give him the power to succeed. Because Moshe Rabbeinu was the sun and he was the moon. And we know that the way that it works is the moon gets its light from the sun, and the light that Yehoshua got was the light from Moshe Rabbeinu. Furthermore, there's a question about the end of the Torah. It says in the end of the Torah that Moshe Rabbeinu died. It says, "Vayamot sham Moshe eved Hashem be'etz Moav al pi Hashem." And Moshe died. So who wrote and Moshe died?
He himself, they said.
So who wrote it? Moshe wrote it? He's dead. Yehoshua wrote it? So the Gemara deals with it. It says, "Vayamot sham Moshe eved Hashem be'etz Moav al pi Hashem." When it says in the pasuk that Moshe passed away in the land of Moab by the way of God. So I'll just summarize it. There's several opinions. One opinion is that Moshe Rabbeinu did write it, but he wrote it up until the end, the last 8 pesukim. And the last 8 pesukim that were given to him was written bedim'ah. What's bedim'ah? Bedim'ah says, you think in Hebrew is with a tear, but bedim'ah in Aramaic means mixed up, boggled. So what it is he took the last 8 pesukim of the Torah, he gave him the letters, and Moshe Rabbeinu wrote the letters. After he passed away, Yehoshua came and he put him in order. And then there's another opinion that Moshe Rabbeinu wrote up until that, and Yehoshua wrote the last part of the Chumash. So when it comes to that question, who wrote, if Moshe died, who wrote the Torah? Several opinions. One opinion is that Moshe Rabbeinu wrote it. Second opinion, it was written by Moshe, but the last 8 pesukim were given to him in boggled letters, and Yehoshua unboggled it. And the last opinion is that Yehoshua wrote the last 8 pesukim. I want to move on to Yehoshua's wife. And it has to do a lot to do with his love for the land of Israel. Because it was his love for Israel so strong that it actually dictated who his wife would be. Do you know the name of his wife?
Israel.
No, Chazak. What is... So, the wife of YEHOSHUA bin Nun is Rachav HaZonah. That's his wife.
Well, she helped the other guy.
Now, Rachav HaZonah, how do we know her? She was the one that helped the spies when they went to the land of Israel. She harbored them in her house. But what's interesting about her is that she had a place of prostitution, and she herself was also involved in those acts from a very young age. I'm not even going to say the age. Up until 40 years, she's in that trade, the oldest profession in the world, and she was very expensive in her job, and she was only with the most prominent people of the land. As a matter of fact, she was with the 31 kings, with every single one of them.
Oh my God.
And she ended up being the wife of Yehoshua bin Nun. Before we clear all the fog, first let's go back to Yosef. Yehoshua haya gilgolo shel Yosef. Remember, Yehoshua was the reincarnation of Yosef. Rachav is Eshet Potiphar. Rachav is the wife of Potiphar that Yosef didn't give in to her when he was Yosef. V'ka'et, now nasa Yoshua et Rachav v'natala beheter. Now he took her with permission, whether she was permissible. Before, she was another man's wife, and he couldn't be with her, and she was also a goya. So as Yosef, he couldn't be with Eshet Potiphar. Yosef as Yoshua could be with Rachav, who is Eshet Potiphar, because there was done with Heter. But then we have to say, but Yehoshua, Moshe Rabbeinu number 2, Rachav Azona, her resume? Are you kidding me? You're Moshe Rabbeinu number 2. You want to Ruach HaKodesh, Navi, Chazak, Kadosh, Tar, and you're going with this? Look at the power of Teshuvah. It says, when she found out the Emet, that God is the one, her Teshuvah was so real, her Teshuvah was so good, that she was merited to what? To get a zivug of YEHOSHUA bin Nun, and eight prophets came from that zivug. 8 Nevi'im came from YEHOSHUA bin Nun and Rachav Azona.
Who were the prophets?
Never, I have some of the names over here. Never underestimate the power of Teshuvah. You can be on the farthest side of the spectrum as a sinner, but if you do Teshuvah the right way, you can be so holy that you merit to do what? The zivug of YEHOSHUA bin Nun. Sometimes girls, when they're young, they make a lot of mistakes, they're not religious, they wake up late in life and they look back like, oh my God, look at all the mileage I put on the car. And all of a sudden they're like, oh my God, what am I going to do? Who's going to marry me? Who am I going to be with? Who's going to be there? I don't know. Go look at Yehoshua's wife. YEHOSHUA bin Nun, Moshe Rabbeinu number 2. How did he get, look where she was. So what did you do? You don't think you're going to get the best zivug possible? Just do a proper teshuvah process, a big chizuk for people. It's never too late, never too far, never. And Hashem only wants the best for you. Wants the best for you. He already has the best for you. It all depends on how much work you put into it in order to get it. Nevertheless, back into our story, we have Yoshua and Rachav. Why Rachav? Unbelievable. This is maybe one of my favorite chidushim in this class when I read this. It says, Chazal tell us Yehoshua nasa et Rachav. Why? Ki 31 It says the 31 kings that lived in Israel were with Rachav. V'Rachav machzika betocha et tamtzit hakoach hakenani. And she has inside of her all the power of all the kingdoms that are in Israel right now, in Eretz Canaan. You have to understand, I'm going to use words that, so everybody can understand that a man has power, right? And that power is given over at certain times, and the woman is able to hold that power. Rachav held the power of all the 31 kings. So, because she had the power of all 31 kings, betocha et tamtzit hakoach hakinani, that she had inside of her the essence, the power, the concentration of all the power of the kings that were in the land of Israel, and kochot hashayachot la'aretz, and all these powers now belong to the land of Israel. In order to elevate these powers, and in order to sanctify the land, she had to give all those powers to who? To Yehoshua. And by this transfer of power, you are able to have a strong grip on the land of Israel. So we see that Rachav Azona, she was the one that was supposed to give us what? She's the one that gave us the ability to have the power to hold on to the land. Because she captured the power of all the 31 kings during her 40-year stint in that role.
Game of Thrones.
But Sechava?
Huh?
You're saying Sechava was a
Game of Thrones,
reincarnation of
Who?
Game of Thrones.
the wife of Yeshua.
Yes.
She was a
Rachav.
reincarnation of who? Sechava was.
Eshet Potiphar,
Ah.
the wife of Potiphar, and furthermore, I was just discussing it with Ronnie before the class. Know that we are so used to modern Hebrew, modern slang, that we think that the word zona is an improper word, and the truth is, on a pshat level, it is, and it also it's fitting to the storyline. But you'll know that also the word zona comes from the word lazun. It says that she was also feeding people.
Like
One of
Mazon.
her role was to feed people. She had an inn where she fed a lot of people, and that's how she was able to make all these connections and meet all these people and do on and so forth. So how interesting about his wife. Lastly,
That's his only wife, right?
yes, and it says over there that here, Yoshua and Banim, Yoshua didn't have boys, he only had Banot, he only had girls. From the offspring, from the progeny of Yoshua and Rachav, קמו לעם ישראל נביאים ובניהם ירמיהו ויחזקאל. They said that they had 8 of them. I might have the names over here somewhere, but nevertheless, the most prominent ones that came from there are Yirmiyahu and Yehezkel that came from them. So look where he started. Remember, he was the executioner for Paro. Rachav, who she was, and look at the prophets that came from them. In conclusion, YEHOSHUA bin Nun has an incredible life story. About an hour and a half ago, when we started this whole thing, YEHOSHUA bin Nun was YEHOSHUA bin Nun. Just another name in the Torah. Just he took over. He's going to lead the Jewish nation. He was Moshe's assistant. Again, first grade understanding of the story. We sat, we learned Hashem Shamayim veBesimcha, and look what an upgrade we got on this character. Unbelievable. YEHOSHUA bin Nun right now is a hero. Go tell your children to be like YEHOSHUA bin Nun. Unbelievable. Incredible life story. His birth, his upbringing, his apprenticeship to Moshe Rabbeinu, his leadership skills. He's a spiritual leader, a warrior leader. He puts the nation first. He loved Eretz Yisrael. He was the Gilgul of Yosef. He married Rachav. 8 nevi'im yatzu mimeno. 8 different prophets came from his progeny. He was the successor of Moshe Rabbeinu. That in itself is enough. My God. The person that takes over, it's like, lehavdil, million havdalot, right? I remember like in the 80s when Apple was the brand in America, Apple computers, and their CEO, Kota Mahalani, died. Woo! Who's going to take over? Jobs. What was his name? Steve Jobs. Who's going to take over Steve Jobs? Who's going to be Steve Jobs number 2? I don't know, keep some yo-yo, I don't even know his name, but he's there, right? But it was like, oh my God, who's going to take over that? Think about Moshe Rabbeinu. Who's going to take over Moshe Rabbeinu? It's not easy shoes to fill. Now, so in short, the successor of Moshe Rabbeinu, and Moshe Rabbeinu is the one that is famously known that he reached Sha'ar Nun. Rami, this is for you. Moshe Rabbeinu is the one that reached the 50th level. Sha'ar Nun, right? His student is called what? Bin Nun. The son of Nun. Why? Because he was able to what? Get to be super close to the 50th level all day, every day. So what did he get? He also got Ben Nun. He's the son of the 50th level. He was able to see that in play as well. That's why he was able to fulfill that role. That's why he got that job. That's why he's able to fill the shoes, the big shoes of Moshe Rabbeinu. And it needed to be something special. As the Pasuk says, Ish Asher Ruach Bo. It has to be a special person that has a special spirit in him. Who is that? YEHOSHUA bin Nun. Thank you for coming to the class.
I have a question.
1 second, let me say my end. And I want to thank you for coming. And the Be'ezat Hashem, I'll see you guys on Thursday. Thursday we have the class on Yud Gimel Midot Rachamim. We just started the first one, the introduction. Unbelievable. This week we're going to talk about the behind the scenes of Moshe Rabbeinu's questions, as it's brought in the Zohar, as it's brought in the Gemara, and as it's brought in the Midrashim. You won't believe how Moshe Rabbeinu asked the question when it says, Hashem, show me your ways. All the different questions that he asked. Unbelievable class. Very big. Chizuk for Emunah. Hopefully we see you there. Hashem baruch atzchem sameach.
Can you please